What truly is acceptance, and how does it play a factor in the anxiety recovery space? A lot of people reach out to me and say, Shaan, I've been trying your acceptance method and it's really working well in the anxiety recovery journey, or I'm not sure if I'm doing it correctly. And they almost put me in this box of this preacher of acceptance. And honestly, it's very frustrating for me because I don't care about methods. I don't care about techniques. I was just like you. I just wanted to get out of this. And I didn't care what the method was, what the technique was, what I needed to do to really overcome this. All I cared about is what's the right thing to do and what can I do to make sure this isn't a problem long term. So in this video, I'm really gonna break down this idea of acceptance and how it plays in the anxiety recovery space. So with that said, let's get it started. So if you're new to the channel or you're somebody who doesn't really know the concepts very well, I would highly recommend checking out the free book down below that really explains the mechanics of anxiety recovery. In this video, I'm not going to really talk about the mechanics, the steps you need to overcome. I'm really going to be focusing on this principle of acceptance because I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding around that. And I really want to clear this up for you so that you can have proper expectations in your anxiety recovery journey. So if you really don't know about the mechanics or what exactly to do, we'll cover that later. I would definitely recommend checking out that free ebook. Now, when people are really struggling with anxiety, they are desperate to feel better. They are monitoring how they feel. They're judging themselves of I should be feeling this way, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? What can I do to make this go away? And a big part about anxiety recovery is really focusing on the right things. So when people are struggling with anxiety, they're very hyper-focused on how they're feeling. They're measuring how they're feeling almost every second of every day. They're really telling themselves, I shouldn't be feeling this way, or I should be feeling this way. Why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? Does it mean that there's something else going on in the background? And they're lost. They're confused. They don't know what to do. Now, as they start going through the anxiety recovery journey, and it's something that I went through as well, one of the things you start realizing very quickly is you don't know what to do because you don't know what's happening. And what I mean by that is people just don't know why they're experiencing symptoms, right? You might be getting panic attacks. You might be getting depersonalization, derealization. You might be getting really intense, intrusive thoughts. You might be getting intense physical sensations that are convincing you that there's something seriously wrong. And when you don't know the mechanics of anxiety, well, then it's really hard to focus on the solution. How do you fix a problem when you don't even know what's going on? And this is where people start stumbling across acceptance. And acceptance, they loosely define it as, okay, well, if I just let the symptoms be there without fighting it, the symptoms go away on their own. Now, here's the ironic part, and this is what makes it so difficult. That's technically true. However, because people are so desperate to try to feel better, that they start using acceptance as another tool to make this go away. You might have tried breathing techniques, you might have tried yoga, you might have tried acupuncture, you might have tried supplements, you might have tried meditation, you might have tried all these different things, and these things should help with anxiety, but you end up using it as a sophisticated tool to shield yourself from the anxiety. You're trying to eliminate these symptoms with these things. And so what's happening is that you're using these things as a tool to make it go away. And when people stumble across acceptance, they try to utilize it the same way. They try to use acceptance as a way to make this go away. And so what ends up happening is that acceptance becomes a sophisticated form of avoidance. And this is why I also don't like it when people put me in this category of Shaan is teaching acceptance. Acceptance is a part of recovery, and to be honest with you, most people aren't able to even define what acceptance is. They define it as, if I accept, this will go away. Now, I wanted to ask you something. Is that really acceptance? Is that true acceptance? Is acceptance conditional in the sense that if I accept, well, then whatever I want will come to me? Again, this is why acceptance is a little bit difficult because in a way, yes, part of anxiety recovery is if you just let the symptoms be there, if you allow it, recovery does come to you. But if you have the expectation of, or even the intention of, okay, I'm going to accept in order to make the symptoms go away, it doesn't work. The second thing about it is that acceptance is still one piece of the anxiety recovery journey. You know, when we're guiding people through the mentorship, through the Bye Panic mentorship, we have these three, almost like these Venn diagrams, these three components to recovery, right? We call it BBP, right? Bye Panic. So the first B stands for body. And really what that means is really understanding the mechanics of the nervous system. This way people know in terms of a physiological perspective, why they're experiencing symptoms. If you're convinced that every heart palpitation is the onset of a heart attack, well, then you really don't understand the mechanics of anxiety, and you don't know how anxiety creates symptoms like palpitations, like dizziness, like nausea, like intrusive thoughts, like depersonalization, derealization. So that's one big component of it, is really understanding the mechanics. And when we're guiding people through the recovery journey, we're really focusing, especially on the beginning, really helping them understand and demystify anxiety. So that's 1/3 of recovery, which is really understanding the mechanics, understanding how the recovery journey looks like, what to expect. Then the second B is behaviors and mindset. Focusing on these things will actually ensure that you never fall back into the cycle. The truth is, with anxiety recovery, it's actually very clear. I know if you're here, I know how to get you here. And if this is recovery, I know how to get you here. But what often blocks people is their mindsets and their behaviors. What I mean by that is if they have behaviors or even mindsets that go against the recovery journey, well, then what that's going to do is that's going to sabotage it. And a simple example I would give of that is one of the many mindsets that can hold people back is this idea that anxiety is an identity, or it's something you're always going to deal with, or you're just an anxious person. See, what that does is that's not enough fuel in the fire then, because anytime you're going through the recovery journey, it's always an up and down affair. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Well, every time you take 2 steps back, you're going to re-justify the fact that you're not able to recover. And that's because you identify yourself as an anxious person. Anytime you make some progress and you go 2 steps back, you're going to validate the fact of, hey, look, I told you I'm just an anxious person. So mindsets and behaviors are the second B that really is a huge chunk of the anxiety recovery journey, and focusing on reframing those things. Then the third one, which is the P, that stands for presence. Now that aspect is very much on how to respond to the anxiety in the moment. This is where the concept of acceptance comes in, right? And again, we talk about acceptance as not a sophisticated form of avoidance. And I would even say that part of the recovery journey, part of the presence part, is twofold. What happens is that you shouldn't be resisting these symptoms. You should let the symptoms be there. But at the same time, you can't be chasing a feeling. A lot of people that are struggling with anxiety, they are not resisting the symptoms, but they start chasing a feeling. I want to go on vacation and I want to enjoy it. How do I make sure I enjoy myself? Or how do I have fun? Or how do I become happy? You're chasing a feeling. Again, just like anxiety recovery, these symptoms going away as a consequence, those feelings coming in of happiness and joy also happen as a consequence. So you can't be resisting a feeling, but you also can't be chasing a feeling. And here's the part that I want to go really deep on, okay? A huge part about anxiety recovery is becoming grounded in reality. And what I mean by that is, if you want to recover, you need to accept everything the way it is. This is very hard for us to do as humans, because as humans, we're very capable. One of the best things about being humans as a species is our ability to use tools. We're really able to improve our quality of life because we're so capable. If you have a problem, you're used to fixing that problem by thinking your way through the problem and taking the actual steps that are necessary. Humans are really great at that. However, it actually can become a hindrance in the anxiety recovery journey. And this is why a lot of people get stuck. They try to use ways to get out of this, but a huge part of anxiety recovery is recognizing that you need to be grounded in reality and looking at things the way they are. And by the way, this is also why a lot of spiritual teachers talk about anxiety. If you ever wonder why do people that struggle with anxiety or people that are talking about anxiety always have a spiritual component, because so much of the recovery journey is accepting things the way they are. But like I said, you really need to make sure your mindset's in the right place, but you also need to understand the mechanics of anxiety, because if you don't understand the mechanics or why you're feeling a certain way, you're just not going to accept the way things are. And if you don't adjust the mindset, well, then you'll always find ways to fall back in. If you want to recover, you have to accept things the way that they are. Now, how does acceptance make all of this go away, right? Well, if you're accepting and you're allowing the symptoms to be there and you're not resisting, you're not fighting it, or you're not focusing on how you should or shouldn't feel, well, then your nervous system has a break. It's not always chasing something. It's not always running away from something. What that does is that desensitizes your nervous system. The reason why you're experiencing symptoms and sensation is because your nervous system is very sensitized, it's very stressed. And people add more stress, more pressure by trying to fix the symptoms, not recognizing that the symptoms, as intense as they are and as bizarre as they are, they're all a consequence of the anxiety. But the biggest hindrance in people's recovery journey is they start thinking, oh, I should feel this way, or I shouldn't feel this way. And what they're doing is they're imposing on how they feel, they should feel on reality right now. When you're saying I should feel, or I shouldn't, or this should happen, or that shouldn't happen, you're imposing your ideas on reality and not accepting reality the way it is. And a big part of anxiety recovery is discerning what's real and what's not, right? The sensations you're feeling are real, but the cause of it isn't because there's something seriously wrong. Accepting the symptoms that are there right now without any judgment, without focusing on should or shouldn't, because the idea of should or shouldn't are all just ideas and they're not reality and they're not real. And this is why people develop frustration during the anxiety recovery journey, because they have a certain expectation and reality is different than their expectation, and then they get mad and they're frustrated because the reality isn't matching up with their frustration. That is not acceptance, right? Acceptance is recognizing these are the symptoms, this is here, I don't need to do anything about it, I'm just gonna let it be there. And this is why trust is such a big part of the recovery journey. And a lot of people talk about having faith during the journey. This is what they mean, because you have to trust the process. You have to let go of the fact of, look, if I just leave this alone, I have to trust that everything's gonna be okay. But what a lot of people try to do is they try to skip that step. How do I get myself to trust? And the only way to trust is by going forward. The only way you will know is if you actually give it a try and give yourself to it. What you want is certainty. You want to say, well, how am I certain that this is gonna work if I give myself there? The only way to know is by jumping in. So it's important to recognize that the concept of acceptance isn't conditional, right? It's like love, right? It's that example I give. If you love somebody, if you truly love somebody, well, is there an expectation that they should love you back? Is that true love? If you have a kid, or if you're really in love with a spouse, are you loving them because they love you back? Or are you just loving them because you genuinely love them and it's a form of giving without any true expectation or any sort of return? Well, acceptance is the same way, right? People want to accept and they say, well, how do I ensure if I accept the symptoms go away? Well, I would challenge them. I'm like, that's not real acceptance. And so as somebody who guides people through the recovery journey, it puts me in a really weird category because they put me into this label of, hey, Shaan teaches acceptance, but at the same time, they're not really accepting. And the other thing to really recognize is, again, acceptance is one part of the recovery journey, right? Even if you accept, acceptance alone will get you there, but what happens is because people are on the recovery journey or people have been struggling for so long, they've developed bad habits or even negative mindsets that throw them in. And also because as a society, we're not really educated about anxiety. We don't really know what's happening. So anxiety works in a certain way where it makes you look at the worst case scenario or assume the worst case scenario because there was a survival advantage in the past. And so that phrase, knowledge dispels fear, is a huge part of anxiety. That's why understanding the mechanics, the body component, is so important, as well as the mindset. Then when you can truly allow the symptoms to be there, not putting yourself on a time limit, that's ironically when the symptoms go away. But it can't happen through expectation, and trust is a big aspect of it. And that's why I always say, if you're really serious about overcoming this and you really want to collapse time, the best way to trust is really having guidance. Somebody who can guide you through the recovery journey, help you identify these things and help you really focus on true freedom. So I would highly recommend find somebody to guide you through the journey. If you want some free resources, I have some down below. If you want me and my team to be guiding you through the recovery journey, that's cool too. There's going to be a link for an application. We're pretty choosy on who we work with. We really want to make sure that we're working with people that are very committed. So what happens is that if you want to work with me and my team, you're going to watch a quick video. It's going to be about 15-20 minutes, really breaking down how the recovery journey looks like, seeing if it's a really good fit for you. If you feel like this is what I I need, then what you will do is you'll fill out an application. And then what we will do is we'll have just a quick chat just to really see, is the mentorship the right fit for you, exactly what you're struggling with, really making sure that we can set expectations and give you a good perspective of how your recovery journey will look like. And then after all that, if you feel like the mentorship's the right fit, well, then you can just work with me and my team and we'll guide you through the journey. And even if you want to try to figure it out on your own at first, that's totally fine. Or if you want to work with somebody else too, that's fine. Just make sure they're understand the mechanics, but also I've always found somebody who's been there before. If somebody's really been there, then there's a certain type of knowledge that you just can't get from reading a book. So anyways, I hope this video helped, and I'll see you in the next one.